It began with the smell of dust and memories. When Emily returned to her late father's house, the air felt heavier than before, as if every wall carried whispers of laughter long silenced. The furniture stood where it always had, but the warmth was gone. Her father's favorite chair, once the throne of her childhood evenings, sat untouched, a monument to the man who had promised her that this house would always be hers. Her father had remarried just 3 years before his sudden death. The woman, Lorraine, was charming to the world, graceful in manner, but always carried an invisible blade behind her smile. To outsiders, she seemed devoted and gentle, but Emily had seen the quiet greed in her eyes long before anyone else noticed. When Emily's father passed, she believed grief would soften Lorraine. Instead, it seemed to set her free. Within a month, Lorraine changed the locks, took control of the estate, and claimed that her husband's will had left everything in her name. Emily, heartbroken and confused, tried to reason, but the paper said otherwise. Days turned into weeks, and one morning, an email arrived from a property agency. The family home, her father's house, had been listed for sale. Emily stared at the glowing screen, frozen. She felt a wave of betrayal unlike anything before. The house wasn't just property. It was her childhood, her father's legacy, her last connection to the man who'd raised her alone after her mother's death. And now, it was being auctioned off by a woman who had known neither its history nor its love. Lorraine justified it with a cruel logic. The house is too big, too costly, too full of pain. But the truth was simpler. Money. Lorraine's appetite for wealth was endless. She had sold jewelry, furniture, and now the only thing that truly mattered. Emily left the house that day with tears in her eyes, but something burning beneath them. A quiet, dangerous fire. She didn't shout, didn't argue. Instead, she promised herself one thing. Lorraine will regret this. In the nights that followed, Emily began remembering fragments of conversations, half-truths her father had once shared, things about Lorraine's past that never quite made sense. A name she once heard on a phone call, a letter she had seen hidden in a drawer, something about Lorraine's previous life that her father never spoke of again. And as she pieced the fragments together, a dark idea began to form. She had lost her house. But maybe she could sell something far more valuable, something Lorraine had buried for years. Emily began digging through the remnants of her father's things, old files, receipts, boxes of papers Lorraine hadn't bothered to destroy. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, only that she would know it when she found it. Weeks passed with no luck. But one night, hidden beneath a box of outdated tax records, she found a sealed envelope addressed to her father, from someone named Marion H. The handwriting was elegant, but shaky. The date was from 15 years ago, before Lorraine had even met her father. The first few lines chilled Emily's spine. The letter hinted at a child, at promises made and broken, at payments that had kept things quiet. Emily read the letter over and over until her eyes blurred. Lorraine had a child, a secret one. Someone she had abandoned long before entering Emily's life. The words painted a picture of guilt, manipulation, and deceit. Lorraine had paid someone, Marion, perhaps the child's guardian, to keep the secret buried. It was a transaction of silence. Emily suddenly understood Lorraine's obsession with money. It wasn't greed alone, it was fear. Fear of exposure? Fear that her perfect image could crumble. Emily's heart raced. She could destroy Lorraine with this, but she also knew the truth had to be revealed carefully, strategically. Lorraine was cunning, powerful, and socially connected. A reckless move could backfire, so Emily watched. She followed Lorraine's routines, her calls, her meetings. She learned how Lorraine moved money between hidden accounts. Every observation became another weapon quietly loading in Emily's hands. Then came the breaking point. A notice appeared online. Property sold, 14 Maple Avenue. The sale was final. The house was gone. Emily felt her chest tighten. She walked past the old home one last time, watching strangers step through the gate that once welcomed her childhood. Lorraine stood on the porch, smiling proudly at the buyers. Something inside Emily snapped. That night, she made her decision. If Lorraine had taken her father's house, Emily would take Lorraine's life as she knew it. The next morning, she opened her laptop and began typing an email. Not to Lorraine, but to someone else entirely. A journalist. The journalist's name was Hannah Clark, an investigative reporter who specialized in exposing hidden family scandals and fraudulent elites. Emily had followed her work for years. She knew Hannah didn't publish rumors. She published proof. Emily didn't reveal her full identity. She wrote under a pseudonym and shared only what she had. A copy of the letter, a timeline, and a few bank statements she had found among her father's papers. It was enough to catch Hannah's attention. The response came quickly. Hannah wanted to meet. Emily hesitated, but she knew she had no other choice. She arranged to meet in a quiet cafe 2 towns over. Every step there felt like walking deeper into her father's shadow. Hannah listened, verified, and asked questions Emily hadn't thought of. Together, they began tracing the money trail, uncovering accounts Lorraine had kept under different names. Each detail added weight to the growing mountain of evidence, and then they found it, a birth certificate. The name matched the one in Marion's letter. The child's name was Daniel Harper, born 22 years ago, a forgotten son. Emily couldn't imagine the story behind it. Why Lorraine had abandoned him, what she had paid to keep it quiet, or what had become of him. But one thing was clear. Lorraine's perfect reputation would not survive this. Still, Emily wanted justice, not chaos. She didn't want to destroy an innocent life. So she asked Hannah to wait before publishing, to give her time to confront Lorraine first. But fate moved faster than Emily's plan. That weekend, Emily returned home to find an envelope on her doorstep. No return address. Inside was a single photo of her and Hannah at the cafe, and beneath it a note written in Lorraine's handwriting. "You think I don't know what you're doing?" Emily froze. Lorraine had found out. Her secret war had been discovered. And now Lorraine was ready to fight back. For days after the anonymous warning, Emily lived in quiet fear. Every sound outside the window, every vibration from her phone made her pulse rise. She knew Lorraine was watching. The woman who once smiled through lies had now stepped into the open, revealing the ruthless side Emily always suspected. Lorraine began her campaign slowly, with whispers. Mutual friends stopped returning Emily's calls. People she'd known since childhood began to avoid her. Rumors spread that Emily was trying to extort her stepmother, that grief had made her unstable. The gossip crawled across the community like poison ivy. Emily didn't fight back. Not yet. She let Lorraine think she was winning. But behind the calm, she prepared her final strike. Hannah, the journalist, urged her to stay safe and to collect one last piece of proof, something that showed not only the secret child, but also how Lorraine had stolen the inheritance through fraud. If they could prove that, everything Lorraine owned could be taken back legally. Emily dug deeper into her father's old storage drive, hidden files encrypted under his initials. There she found recordings of calls between her father and Lorraine, captured automatically from his business phone. In them, Lorraine's voice was sharp, impatient, talking about moving assets and altering the signature pages before probate. The truth was undeniable. Lorraine had forged parts of the will. That night, Emily copied everything onto a single USB drive and placed it inside the same envelope as Marion's letter. But before she could send it to Hannah, a car pulled up outside her small apartment. A black sedan, Lorraine's driver. Lorraine herself stepped out, dressed elegantly as always, her eyes glinting in the dark. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was a threat. She reached out her hand, not in greeting but demand. Emily felt the chill of fear slide down her spine. She said nothing, simply backed away and closed the door. Through the window, she watched Lorraine smile faintly, then walk back to the car. It was the kind of smile that said, "This isn't over." When the car disappeared into the night, Emily realized there was no turning back. Lorraine was desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Emily pressed upload. The files began to transfer to a secure cloud link she'd shared only with Hannah. Before the bar reached 100%, the power in her building suddenly went out. The screen went black. And somewhere in the darkness outside, a car engine idled. The next morning, Emily woke to police sirens echoing through the street. A fire had broken out in the basement of her building just before dawn. The electrical system was completely destroyed, and several apartments had been damaged, including hers. When she checked her belongings, her laptop was gone. The USB drive, too. Panic clawed at her chest, but when she logged into her backup account on her phone, relief flooded her veins. The upload had completed minutes before the power failure. The evidence was safe online. Lorraine had failed. That afternoon, Hannah called with news that would change everything. She had verified every document, every account, every voice recording. A story was ready for publication. One that would expose Lorraine's past, the abandoned son, the forged will, and the property theft. But Hannah gave Emily a choice: publish immediately and destroy Lorraine publicly, or wait for legal authorities to act quietly and reclaim what rightfully belonged to her. Emily thought of her father. He was a man who believed in justice, not vengeance. For a brief moment, she considered the quiet route. But then she remembered watching strangers step through the gate of her stolen home, the humiliation, the grief. No, Lorraine didn't deserve quiet consequences. She deserved truth, loud, undeniable, irreversible truth. The article went live that night. It spread faster than wildfire. By morning, it was everywhere. Socialite Lorraine H. accused of abandoning child, forging will, and selling stolen estate. Television anchors repeated her name. Online forums tore apart every detail. Lorraine's charities cut ties within hours. Her friends vanished. Her perfect world collapsed under the weight of her lies. Police launched an investigation, freezing her accounts and seizing documents. The buyers of Emily's old house pulled out of the deal once the scandal surfaced. The property reverted to legal dispute, one Emily would almost certainly win. Lorraine, meanwhile, disappeared from public view. Her phone numbers stopped working. Her lawyer resigned. For a moment, Emily felt victorious. But as she stared at the screen showing Lorraine's ruined reputation, she felt something unexpected: pity. Behind all the greed and deception, there had once been a frightened woman running from her past. Emily didn't forgive her, but she understood her. Still, Lorraine wasn't done. 3 days later, a letter arrived at Emily's apartment. No envelope this time, just a folded piece of paper pushed under the door. It contained a single line: "You've ruined my life. Now I'll tell him who his real mother is." The threat chilled Emily to the bone. Him, Lorraine's secret child, Daniel Harper. Hannah traced him easily. He lived 2 states away, a quiet mechanic with no knowledge of his origins. Lorraine's final move was clear. If she couldn't control her story, she'd at least shatter Emily's conscience by involving the innocent man she'd tried to protect. Emily faced a moral crossroad. She could warn Daniel herself, tell him the truth gently before Lorraine twisted it, or she could do nothing, letting the woman sink further into isolation and disgrace. She chose compassion. Emily drove to the small town where Daniel lived. Watching him from afar, she saw a man who resembled neither Lorraine nor the cruelty she embodied. He seemed kind, grounded, ordinary. She left an anonymous letter in his mailbox, telling him enough to prepare him but not enough to destroy him, that his mother's identity was about to surface publicly, and that he should brace himself. 2 days later, the news broke again. Lorraine had been found attempting to leave the country using falsified documents. She was arrested at the airport for obstruction and fraud. Cameras captured her face, pale, exhausted, defeated. The world that once adored her now turned away. Emily didn't celebrate. She simply walked to the edge of the property she had fought so hard to reclaim. The for sale sign was gone. The house, though scarred and empty, stood waiting. She placed her father's photo on the windowsill and whispered a silent promise to fill those rooms with warmth again. In the following months, legal proceedings restored her inheritance. The house became hers legally and symbolically. Lorraine's name faded from headlines, replaced by other scandals. Then, one spring morning, Emily received an unexpected letter. It was from Daniel. He had discovered who she was. He thanked her, not for revenge, but for honesty. He said he planned to visit the mother who had betrayed them both, not to hate her, but to understand why she had chosen silence. Emily folded the letter and felt a quiet peace. Justice had been served, but mercy had followed behind it, a balance her father would have admired. As the sun set over the house, she realized that her revenge hadn't been about destroying Lorraine. It had been about reclaiming her own story, her father's memory, and the home that greed had once stolen. The past no longer owned her, and somewhere, in a cold cell miles away, Lorraine finally understood what real loss felt like. Not the loss of money or status, but of the one thing she could never buy back: trust.